letting my wheels spin in my head on the directions I want to take this. An interesting thing that comes up for me is in the examples that I've read myself, and I think I've read, I'll say 30 of these papers, give or take myself, that are attempting to demonstrate transmission or contagion. And in virtually every one that I've read, the people who are involved in the experiment are aware that they're being exposed to something that is going to elicit symptoms of illness. And even so, taking into consideration the placebo nocebo effect, largely they don't become sick, even with their awareness that they are like, take for example the Rosenau experiments during the Spanish flu. These were 100 volunteers who were, in their minds, I'd imagine, this is, me applying what I think would have been going on at the time, but that, hey, we're going into these Spanish flu wards for the 13 of them who did, where there's a bunch of people who are sick on their deathbeds, and we're going to be exposed to them and talk with them at close range. And despite that, none of them became sick. So what's so interesting about this is, of course, I acknowledge the placebo nocebo effect. Obviously, like, how can you not? But even with that as a factor, this paradigm is still failing horribly failing to produce the claimed the results that back up their claim.
Yeah, I found some newspaper articles actually, because I thought the same thing. It's like, isn't it interesting that the nocebo effect didn't work in those situations with the Rosenau experiments? And for anyone listening, these are a group of, they're probably the most comprehensive human contagion experiments ever produced by the US Department of Health, which is now the CDC, and the US Navy after World War I. They exposed healthy sailors to people with Spanish flu in every way imaginable and couldn't make them sick. So yeah, there was a curious absence of this nocebo effect in these experiments, but I actually found newspaper articles that went and interviewed the doctors of these experiments. And
Of the
the
Spanish
reason
flu
that they said,
of the Rosenau experiments themselves.
yeah.
Wow. Okay.
And they said that the reason why there was no contagion was because the soldiers couldn't get what they didn't fear. And they literally say in these newspaper reports that if you eliminate the fear of the flu or the fear of contagion, you eliminate the fear of getting sick. So they literally say this in these newspaper articles. So those soldiers went into this with no fear. I'm doing this for the betterment of humanity. I'm doing this because it's going to help people. I'm going to help these doctors out. We're going to find a cure. I have no fear. No fear, no illness. And just another side note that I wanted to mention earlier was that they have done experiments where they expose people to the bodily fluids of healthy people, and people got sick. So this act of inoculating things, squirting foreign substances into people's noses, is sufficient in and of itself to produce an illness. So it doesn't have to be a viral thing. There were also experiments done by the Common Cold Research Unit. So this was a unit established by the United States military in combination with the United Kingdom government after World War II. So they had a field hospital over in the United Kingdom that this United States military donated to the UK government. And they turned that into a research facility to try and find the cause of colds and flus. Now, in these experiments, when people went there, they knew they were going to a place called the Common Cold Research Unit. They knew they were going to be exposed to germs. And I think despite their most desperate attempts, they could only ever make, in the best outcome, 30% of people sick. And this wasn't all the time. Like, they had to try really hard to get 30% sick. Most of the time they got a result of 0.
Wow.
But that's the nocebo effect. I'm going to a place that's called the Common Cold Research Unit. I'm going to be exposed to germs by men in white coats with fancy equipment in a clinical setting, and it's all very serious. And I want the researchers to find the results they're looking for. So you manifest the symptoms. They were well aware of this. They talk about this in their papers, that it's very difficult to eliminate this effect, this nocebo effect, this power of belief, and it confounds their results. And I find all this really interesting, that even when they tried desperately to make people sick by putting them in contact with sick people or exposing them to their bodily fluids, they couldn't do it. This goes against everything we're told, that this phenomena actually occurs. So that in and of itself, even if it does occur, it's incredibly rare, not enough for things like pandemic or to explain pandemics.
Right.
And even if it does occur, don't worry about it, because the likelihood of it happening is almost zero.
Right. Right. The mode.
I think it's zero, but yeah.
Yeah. Well, I mean, based on what you've discovered with your 204 studies, the mode is zero. So that's important to know. So I think a lot of this is largely attributed to, I guess you could chalk it up to things that we don't quite understand, which is, kind of what we're getting at here. What they claim to know, they have no evidence for. And we're kind of sitting in a state of, well, now let's explore and try to figure out what's going on with all of this. But with that being said, it's largely a product of something to do with our psychology, let's say. So when it comes to the mass psychogenic effects of something like a quote pandemic, how does that apply with what you're discussing here?
Yeah, mass psychogenic illness, which is basically a spread of a disease with no known cause. This has been documented 60 times in human history, maybe more, but 60 well-documented cases of instances where people got sick with the same symptoms at the same time. They couldn't explain what it was. So we're talking about things like the Tanganyika laughing outbreak or pandemic that happened in Africa in the 60s or 70s.
Could you go into more detail on that, please?
Yeah, the Tanganyika laughing pandemic was a school in Africa. I can't remember exactly which country, but schoolgirls there started laughing uncontrollably to the point where they were physically incapacitated. They felt like someone was chasing them, and they broke out into fits of laughter where they couldn't do anything else. And it started to spread from one child to the next. So pretty much within a week or two of this happening, the school had to close down because nearly all of the students, or a large percentage of the students, were affected by this condition. Now, when the school closed down, they sent the students back to their hometowns or their tribes, villages. And when that happened, it spread to the villages. And then it started spreading to other villages in the area. And this went on for over a year, and it affected thousands of people. Now, this isn't a viral illness, clearly, yet we see something spreading between people. Now, what was the cause? I have no idea. I don't think anybody knows. We can hypothesize what those causes might be, but I'm pretty certain we can safely say it's not a virus. So, but what this demonstrates is that things can spread. Ideas can spread. Behaviors like laughing or crying or yawning, anger, frustration, happiness, joy. These things can spread. This is social contagion, or in some instances, mass psychogenic illness. No pathogen required. And actually, that's a chapter in the book. No pathogen required. And we document all of these cases. We go through and talk about social contagion and how that works. So yeah, here we have a phenomena where it basically mimics contagion with an absence of an infectious particle. that acts and behaves and has all the hallmarks of a viral pandemic. So that in and of itself should really get people questioning what we're told about pandemics, that they're viral in nature. The other thing that I will say quickly is that there are also documented instances in the medical literature where the media have reported in the news, on the television, newspaper, magazines, social media, of an example in New Zealand where there was essentially an antidepressant drug that came off label. And all these people who were on this name brand drug were then moved onto this sort of it went off patent, and they went onto this generic brand drug. The media started reporting that the generic brand drug is associated with all these different side effects. And I think they listed 6 or 7 side effects, right? The list of side effects was actually like 20 or 30 things. But they had a massive influx of adverse reported events from this new generic name drug that people were taking, reporting only the symptoms that the news was telling them about. They didn't report any of the other 20 or 30 side effects that are on the package insert for this drug. Curiously, they were only getting the side effects that the media was telling them that they would experience. Now, if you extrapolate this out to a pandemic where the media, the government, the medical profession are in full force, in full swing, in lockstep, telling everybody the world over the same message, that there's this deadly pandemic, you're going to experience these symptoms at this particular time, it's hitting this location, this is how long you're sick for, this is what to expect, fear, 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 here it's coming, it's coming, it's coming, get ready. What's going to happen? People are going to experience these same symptoms because they're being told to. This is, again, social contagion, mass psychogenic illness, the nocebo effect. If you took that out of the equation and there was no media reporting in 2020, nothing would have happened. So yeah, take all of that information for what you will, make of it what you want. But I think it's very telling as to what may have gone on, not just with the 2020 pandemic, but all pandemics in history.